Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming out to the Indianapolis Liberation Center today for our press conference on the state of policing here in Indianapolis. My name is Aubrey Whiteman, and I am an organizer for the Party for Socialism and Liberation, one of the anchor organizations at the Liberation Center. This is our third and final installment of our series on the path to and beyond mass incarceration. This series was initiated by a new group of volunteers to the center who wanted to study the causes of mass incarceration nationally, since the United States has the largest prison population in the world. Currently, the United States has over 7 million incarcerated people, confronting the racist and exploitive criminal justice system. The first event in this series, was a book discussion on Shackled and Chained, which is a novel written by Eugene Puryear. Last week, on Thursday, we held the second installment, where we watched a documentary on the Pendleton Two. The Pendleton Two are political prisoners who stood up against racist guards and inmates to protect another inmate from being beaten to death. Today, we hold the press conference for those who are in confrontation with the violence public safety systems that we know of by the names of the IMPD and the Marion County Sheriff's Department. The Liberation Center is a physical and virtual community hub dedicated to advancing the causes of all oppressed peoples. We work to overcome the divisions imposed on us by the oppressing class. As a center, we have fought against anti-homelessness legislation, against police brutality, and the freedom and liberation of Palestine, as well as all occupied peoples. We are 100% volunteer-run and funded by individual donations in our affiliate groups, such as Focus Initiatives and Free Shaka Shakur, Arte Mexicano, Hope Packages, and the PSL. The Indianapolis Liberation Center organized this press conference after working with Taylor Bey, a kind, gentle, and caring elderly Black man who you will find speaks more about his grandchildren than anything else. Taylor reached out to the center for help, not necessarily for himself, but for all victims of state violence that he saw piling up on the news. He told us his story and got the courage to speak out publicly for the very first time today. My organization, the PSL, or Party for Socialism and Liberation, has been working closely with the growing coalition of families and the IMPD victims, religious leaders, community leaders, and today, Taylor Bey joins that coalition. However, between announcing the event and today, a major development has surfaced, or at least what appears to be a major development, that is very germane to the coalition's work: Randall Taylor's resignation as IMPD's police chief. As we have said in our statement, which you can find on our website, the PSL sees this as a victory the people have won after organizing for his resignation since 2021. This said, we are not disillusioned by this public act. Taylor was a sacrificial lamb who won't suffer any consequences, and the system will remain the same despite the IMPD changing face. Our current public safety system is working exactly how it was designed to function. We reject the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department's stance that they were justified in shooting almost 20 people this year, all but one of whom were Black. We are tired of the lack of action by these political leaders out in the community. As Mayor Hogsett claims to be concerned about police brutality in Indianapolis, he simultaneously gifts the IMPD and Marion County Sheriff's Department 30% of our annual budget for 2024. We need real leadership in this city, leadership by those who actually want a public safety system that functions in the interests and under the control of the people. As the victims and family organizers here, we recognize that police and surveillance don't make us safe. Schools and healthcare, parks and recreation, transportation, and jobs, those institutions that actually provide safety, apparently there's no money for them in the budget. All of our volunteers at the center are inspired by those in our community who will no longer stand by and watch the cops terrorize our neighborhoods. We stand alongside Elder Emoja, who took the initiative to organize the families of victims of IMPD terror. As we enter into our first Christmases that these families will have to experience without their loved ones by their side, we must reflect on what we have done as a coalition to bring justice to these families and highlight the fact that we still have a lot of fight left ahead of us. Elder Emoja is a true leader in Indianapolis who is committed to the end of police violence on poor and oppressed peoples once and for all. We will have 3 speakers today come up, and we will have time for after all these speakers for Q&A and further discussion. Thank you again, everyone, for being here. I would like to welcome Elder Emoja to come up and speak.
Oh. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I don't know if I would define myself as a cheerleader, but definitely an advocate, because someone has to advocate for the least of these. And I have a statement that I will share with you. If somebody could just give that to the press. All right. But I want to speak from my heart. There is a problem when police can shoot down unarmed people, not be held accountable by the police chief who answers to the mayor, or not be held accountable by the prosecutor who is responsible for holding everybody accountable, to include police officers, when they act outside the law. We have a situation of a police officer on the streets of Indianapolis who shot down Gary Harrell, affectionately known as Baby G, running from him, and he couldn't run. His sister had ran over his foot, and so he couldn't run. He's hobbling quickly. And yes, he has a gun, but a gun is not against the law in America. He didn't point the gun at the police officers. He's running, and the police officer gunned him down. This same police officer, Douglas Harrell, is that his name? Corral, help me. Previously had beat a man of African descent, who had been shot at, called the police to tell the police that he had been shot at. The police respond, Corral responds, and beats him up. Knees him in the chest so hard that his spleen gets lodged in the back of his spine. So it was predictable that this police officer had a proclivity to violence, yet and still he stayed on the police force. Some people think that changing the police chief will stop this type of behavior, but I would beg to differ. And this is not a support for Randall Taylor, but it is an accusation, an indictment of the system. Changing personnel and keeping the same system will get you the same thing. And if you talk about in this system, the police chief answers to the mayor, and the mayor evidently is okay with the behavior of the police because he did not ask the police chief to resign or refire him. We have gone on several occasions. In fact, this past Tuesday, we was at Mayor Hogsett's office to ask him to meet with us because we're concerned about how police are policing citizens. I am a Vietnam veteran, decorated, earned the second highest medal that they give a soldier in combat. Left partners on the ground dead, fighting for this country, but not for that. I'm sick of it. I didn't fight for it to come home to be shot down in the streets. Hell, I dodged bullets in Vietnam. In our company, we did not experience the number of casualties that we are experiencing in the city of Indianapolis. And we're in a combat zone. We also said, okay, if we can't get recourse from the mayor, let's go to the prosecutor. We went to the prosecutor to ask him to hold, because this is criminal behavior. You know, if they won't do it administratively, do it criminally. The prosecutor locked the door. We have filed suit, and we got concrete evidence. The prosecutor said he wasn't locking the door. They said it was the landlord that was locking the door. And how is a public office in a private facility and the public can't have access to it? That's a problem, City County Council. Audrey has got video evidence of the door being locked. And so, as an advocate for families whose loved ones have been shot down, we're asking for the mayor to make it policy that if a police officer is involved in a police action shooting, that police officer be drug tested and tested for alcohol on the spot, because they act like they're on something out there. Normal people don't act like that. We are also asking and demanding that police officers like Douglas Carrera, and there's several of them on the force, who have been in previous questionable shootings of people. The administration didn't fire them or hold them administratively accountable. The prosecutor did not charge them criminally. We're tired of that system. That's not the system that I fought for. That's not America. And so we would also demand that the prosecutor, instead of politicizing the grand jury process and hiding behind the grand jury and taking police officers, get them indicted. He put on a case. The case he puts on allows the jury to say that the police officers didn't do what they did, which the video clearly shows that they did. As you look at those young ladies that was beat up on the circle, how did they get exonerated? Ryan Mears, what kind of case did you put on? You said that the police lied on the report. The jury says the case that you put before them, they can't see where they told a lie. So Prosecutor Mears, does that mean that you lying on the police? So on behalf of families impacted by this deadly police behavior, we say enough. God bless you. God keep you. And may justice prevail on earth as it does in heaven.
Wow. Thank you for those powerful words, Elder Emoja. Thank you for highlighting, while we celebrate Randall Taylor's resignation, that we still have a lot of fight. We have a lot of fight for holding the IMPD officers responsible for these shootings accountable, for holding the system accountable, for holding Prosecutor Mears, who is failing to prosecute these officers, accountable. We have a lot of work to do, but it's work that we're happy to be doing for Indianapolis. Next, we will hear from Dr. Derek R. Ford, who is a community organizer in Indianapolis, an organizer with the Liberation Center, an associate professor at DePaul University. Derek has been in the struggle to end police brutality since the police in his home state of New York killed Amadou Diallo, who is an unarmed Haitian immigrant. Diallo was shot by the police 41 times before his wedding after he reached for his identification, after the police asked him to do so. Because of ongoing legal proceedings, Derek is not speaking for Taylor Bey, but rather Taylor Bey will be speaking through Derek. This is the first time Mr. Bey's story is being told to the public, and we salute his courageousness and bravery for boldly standing up to one of the most well-funded gangs in this city. I welcome at this time Derek Ford to the podium.
Taylor, why don't you come up and stand close? This is Taylor Bey. Thank you, Elder Emoja. Thank you, Aubrey. Thank you to the press for being here. Thank you to the press for shining a spotlight on this issue. We know that it's not always easy to do, and so we appreciate, for example, that the Indy Star has been keeping track of all the police shootings this year. While of course we regret the fact that that needs to be done in the first place, nonetheless does. So as Aubrey clarified, I'm not an attorney. I'm not a lawyer. I'm speaking as a friend of Taylor. And I've gotten to know him over several weeks. And I wish that when he could have been there when he and his cohort graduated from St. Vincent de Paul's Getting Ahead program, a program about advancing your spiritual connection to others and your relationship to yourself and the world. But instead, he sat locked up in central booking on trumped up charges, and for years was treated as a guilty perpetrator rather than an innocent victim, while several sheriff's deputies continued to walk the beat. So in the case of the state of Indiana versus Jerome Taylor, docket 49D361807 CM 03779. Can you repeat that? No. Bey was accused of violating two misdemeanors, and he was specifically charged with one count each of resisting law enforcement and disorderly conduct, the first being a Class A misdemeanor, the second being a Class B misdemeanor. The probable cause affidavit that was submitted also included the charge of trespassing. This is because of how the incident unfolded, and it's really just the first of what was many lies told by the sheriff's patrolman. So on July 6th, after getting off work at 3:30 p.m., it's July 6th, right? Taylor took the bus to Eskenazi Hospital to eat a meal. He ate a meal. He's a gardener, right? It's a long day of manual labor. Ate a large meal and nodded off. Two officers approached him to ask him if he was okay, which might be understandable. I don't know about you, but I would be nodding off. But you're in a hospital setting, might make sense. Are you okay? And two officers approached him. So he responded in kind and explained the situation. They left. Later, while he was still sitting down, another cop approached him, a different officer, and asked him who he was, what he was doing, and requested his identification, asked if he was on the hospital's no trespassing list. Clearly, he wasn't, as that charge was not filed against him. And he requested his identification, which for Black people is kind of an impossible request from a law enforcement officer, because what happened was when Taylor got up to retrieve his identification per the officer's request, they feared for their safety. Again, this is Mr. Taylor Bey. One of the reasons he wears eyeglasses is because of a visual condition. And he complied, right? He stood up, he reached for his ID, and as that happened, he was blindsided by another officer who grabbed him and threw him across the floor. He laid on the floor while they handcuffed him and they put him into a wheelchair. One officer held his handcuff, arm, held it back while another officer kicked him in the stomach repeatedly. He was in and out of consciousness. This was around 7 p.m., the time that they arrested him. However, if you look at the sheriff's records, it says they booked him at, this is at 7 p.m., it says they booked him at 4 a.m. This is just like one of the many lies in the affidavit. And so the charges, one, the triple charges of disorderly conduct, resisting arrest, and trespassing, that's like the trifecta that you throw on anybody, because the thing is, like, you get a public prosecutor who's overworked, or a public defender who's overworked, and you say, all right, here are the 3 charges. If you get the maximum penalty for each one, here's what you're looking at. They're offering a plea deal. If you just cop to one, you're on parole or probation. That's why so many people are in the system in the United States, right? It's one of the reasons. Those are like just kind of BS charges. But I, so people, they give into it, right? Although I don't think that when Nicholas Layton, a 33-year-old IMPD cop who was the son of the then Sheriff John Layton, was arrested for dealing cocaine, he felt this way, right? He, of course, served no jail time. So Mr. Taylor got several public defenders because he was innocent and he wasn't afraid. It's only by chance that one of his clients was a gardener, or that one of his gardening clients was a lawyer. And Mr., as any reasonable person would, and knew Taylor, looked at him and thought, I wonder, what exactly do these sheriff's deputies look like who are threatened by this man? And I'd like to see their pictures because I feel the same way. And so Dean Knapp was ultimately able to defend him. That's the only reason that he's still not locked up on these charges, is because he happened to be a gardener for a lawyer who knew him and was a reasonable, decent human being, and knew that this was obviously, but bullshit. But nonetheless, it wasn't until February 15th, 2022. So this was, from July 6, 2018 till February 15th, 2022, that the prosecuting attorney, Cody Coldren, moved for the Marion County judge to dismiss the 2 charges on the grounds of, quote, good defense, end quote. In other words, we lost, we had no case, he won, he's vindicated, right? I should also mention that the affidavit, part of the conclusion, I think it's the second concluding sentence, says that they found a pair of scissors in Mr. Bey's rear left-hand pocket. Again, he's a gardener. There were gardening shears. So his name was cleared last year, and he was vindicated, but he endured years of suffering, and his longtime doctor at Mapleton Center for Health, Fitness, and Nutrition, Dr. Deborah A. Carter-Miller, stated on June 16th, 2021, that in her official opinion, because of the incident of the arrest in 2018, the use of restrictive devices placed on his wrists, he suffered, quote, permanent nerve damage, i.e. neuropathy, that, quote, he still suffers pain from this encounter, should avoid restrictive devices placed around his wrist, end quote. So for 4 years, he has to endure the suffering of the legal process, all these medical appointments, the cost of, the legal services, of transportation, of lost wages, of sort of precarious living situations, and more. But worst of all, like Aubrey said, he talks about his grandchildren more than anything else. He can't play with them like he used to before. No monetary compensation can make up for that. And it's a sad fact that Aubrey has to say that he's lucky to still be alive. So on March 15th, 2022, he filed a complaint in the U.S. Southern District Federal Court which was dismissed a few months later without prejudice because he was representing himself, right, as pro se. And like nobody can represent themselves in a federal district court, because if your margins on your paper are like, not 2 inches from the top or 1 inch from the side, it gets thrown out. So that's why it's dismissed without prejudice. And we are currently working on filing a claim sort of stop the clock so that we can submit the correct paperwork and file for a prayer of relief under the Civil Rights Act of 1983, as well as relief for punitive damages, because but for this incident, Mr. Bey would not have suffered injuries, lost employment opportunities, undergone the trauma, emotional distress, psychological distress, and the legal, transportation, and other expenses, as well as loss of income. And so I'm really honored to know Taylor, and it's rare for victims of the police or law, which includes the sheriffs, for the cops, the victims of the cops, to be so bold as to say this is wrong. And the first thing he said to me was, I don't really want any money. I wanted to tell people the story so it doesn't happen again. That's why he's here. He doesn't want this to happen to anybody else. And the reason it keeps happening is because people don't, they're afraid. They feel like they're alone. And so, as we all salute Taylor, we stand with Taylor, and afterward, I can't address any legal questions, but soon after we'll have details about that once the claim is filed, and we'll update you on the legal proceedings. But there's the legal avenue, but there's also the political avenue, which is just as important, because what happens in the courts, if it stays in the courts, nobody knows about it, right? That's like the grand jury situation. So, I don't know about you, but if I got picked up on a charge of theft, I doubt Ryan Mears would convene a grand jury and wait a year or so to convict, to satisfy charges. But anyways, that's it. Thank you so much. And thank you to Taylor for being here.
Thank you, Derek, for being a voice for Taylor Bey. Taylor Bey, thank you for sharing your story today. I am really, really glad that you are still here. I wish we had met under better circumstances. Our last speaker is a member of the Liberation Center and a librarian here in Indianapolis. Stephen Lane is working in the coalition to bring about a better public safety system. He lives in Hallville, which is a neighborhood that is largely neglected and abused by local government, despite their councilman being the city county's council president. Stephen will speak today about how the community can move forward in the struggle for people's safety for a system that protects rather than oppresses the people. Stephen, please come up to the podium.
Thank you, Aubrey. Thank you all for being here. A piece came out today by Tyler Fenwick in Mirror about who will replace Chief Randall Taylor of the IMPD. We know that Assistant Chief Aaron Bailey is poised to take the position, yet we do not want more of the same. We don't want people in these positions that look like us, but still participate in our oppression. There's currently a pending lawsuit out by 2 former IMPD officers who bravely reported on the abusive actions of Eric Huxley when he stomped Jermaine Vaughn on the circle in 2021 for the crime of talking too loud. The lawsuit against IMPD by these 2 former officers states that the police chief, as well as their superiors, including Bailey, retaliated against them for reporting the abusive actions of another officer. If IMPD was truly an anti-racist organization that cared about community, then that system of accountability for abusive and unnecessary violent behavior within IMPD would be rooted out by its leadership. Yet the leadership retaliated against the cops who turned in Huxley for violently stomping the face of a Black man while in restraints. We know the work environment of IMPD is toxic when you can shoot a Black man like Gary Harrell in the back, killing him, and 5 months later, cop Douglas Carell remains on paid vacation with our tax money. Good. The Harrell family doesn't get vacation like that. They're spending the little free time fighting for justice for Gary. We spoke to the workers of the Burger King on the east side where IMPD officers murdered Frederick Douglass, who was experiencing a mental health crisis just this year. The Davis family isn't on vacation. They are spending their lunch break and any free time to get justice for Frederick. The workers themselves said they called 911 because there's no other number to call when someone's having a mental health crisis in the city to get him help, not to be murdered by the IMPD. Taylor Bey wasn't committing a crime, it was mercilessly beaten by Marion County sheriffs. Thank God he survived his encounter with them, that he stands here today with us to say enough. That this cannot continue. Taylor Bey isn't in it for the money. He's here to make sure that this type of brutality doesn't happen to another resident or visitor to Indianapolis. The IMPD is working exactly how it was designed and intended to work. The lack of will of politicians and IMPD leadership to put any kind of accountability on these officers is a huge problem that we must face together as working people of Indianapolis. If you mess with one poor and oppressed person in Indianapolis, then you mess with all of us. And if you are out there watching this and had an encounter with IMPD or any cop that was unfavorable and abusive, we would like to know about it. And just know that we are on your side. Call or email, get in contact with the Indianapolis Liberation Center immediately so that we can continue to organize for a free and liberated Indianapolis from this antiquated and racist police system, so we can go about building a real public safety system that truly keeps us safe. In the meantime, we working people of Indianapolis must help each other in this moment. We got to stand strong in the face of terror and organize ourselves and our communities to keep each other safe from the harm coming our way from these killer cops. Thank you for your time and attention to this important matter.
Thank you, Stephen. At this point, we have heard from all of our speakers today. While we are not able to field questions about the legal status of Taylor Bey's case, we are happy to answer any questions you might have about the work of the coalition or of the Indianapolis Liberation Center proper. We have about 5 minutes to field your questions and will be available for discussion after the event has concluded.
Is it possible to interview Mr. Bey one-on-one or to hear in his own words?
Not at this time. After the statement has been released, that might be something that we can come back to.
Depends on the question.
Just kind of hearing it in his own words and how it made him feel and how afraid he was and that sort of thing. Because you did a good job, but it has a different impact if it's coming from him.
Taylor, how do you feel about just a 1 or 2 minute response to that question? Because it's already been vindicated on these charges, so.
Thank you, press, for being here. Thank you, PSL, for all your words of encouragement. I've been devastated all these years, struggling. I've looked to the east, the north, the south, all over the state as far as I could understand for help. And it took these challenging people here behind me to assist me to this point. And I will stand with them and appreciate them for the duration of my time, for their help. And as far as how I feel at this hour, I have no words for the way I feel about what happened. I cannot even comment on that. It's how devastating it was. But I do appreciate those that are assisting me to this point, and we will continue. And thank you again. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? All right, that concludes.
I mean, Taylor, there was one thing that you mentioned the other day about when you started to question yourself in the process. Man, that might be helpful to share. You remember that?
After so long of your struggles with the situation of the public offender's office, how they collaborate and share information with no intent on defending you, causes a person, when you know that you're innocent, to actually question your own self. Of just, maybe they're right, because you have no one to assist you in what is true, what is concrete evidence. They turn their backs on the truth. But PSL listened, and they're assisting. If no more than just allowing this to be out for those who have no desire because they don't believe that they'll succeed. They need to continue on to fight. That's what they need to do. Because if you stop, then it's all over. I will not stop. Thank you again.
Thank you.
That concludes this event. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for covering Taylor Bey's story. And thank you, Taylor Bey, for sharing your story with us today.
Thanks.